Welcome to Vibrant Art Studio. Today's lesson is on creating dimension using light. Now we need a light source to start, so I'll go ahead and put a sunshine up on the top of the page. The next thing we're going to do is paint a spot on our canvas. I think I'm going to paint an orange spot, but a big old spot or dot, whatever you want to call it. Now that that spot is in, it looks pretty flat. Our goal is to paint a piece of fruit, so the next thing we need to do is make it look round, because it sure doesn't look like a piece of fruit right now. It's one-dimensional and fruit is two-dimensional. So what I'm going to start doing is putting highlights in, and I'm going to consider my light source, and I'm going to put the highlights, or the lightest color, on the object where the sun would hit, or the light would hit if the light is overhead. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some white, and actually I'm using a little white and a little bit of yellow, in up at the top, just like we did on our color wheel, where we made a lighter shade just by adding white. Now at the bottom, I'm going to need to put in some darker shades. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up that color using the three primaries, that dark gray. And I'm going to put some of that at the place where the light would hit the least. Looking at my light source coming down, would be kind of in this area, would be the darkest area on my piece of fruit. So I'm just going to work on the lights and darks here. Now that my spot is looking fairly round, I'm going to go and put a little dark crescent up at the top. And I'm going to make an area that looks like where a navel should be. And on the other side, I am going to put a light crescent and a little bit of that orange tangerine color in the center. And it'll start to look like there's a dent in my piece of fruit. And that's exactly what I want it to do. So I'm going to put light again up at the side that's closest to the sun. I'm just blending some other stuff in. And then I'm going to put light on after the dent where the sun would catch some light, and just going to keep on smoothing this out. I want it to start looking like a place where a navel should be. So I'm putting a little bit more dark in and a crescent again, because if the light is coming down, it would cast a shadow on the dent in the fruit where the navel would go, and then the light would catch on the other side. So that's what I'm trying to do here. That looks like a good place for a navel. Now that I've got that in, I think I'll work some more on my lights and dark. Try to give this piece of fruit a little bit of texture. Now that I've got some more lights and dark in, we'll put our little navel in. Put just a little dot up at the top. Smooth it out just a tiny bit. And our orange has a navel. I'll go ahead and put a little bit of more highlights in. Now we've got a nice round piece of fruit in the middle of space. That looks kind of silly, so I think we'll go ahead and put it on a table. So I'm just going to make a line on both sides of my fruit to indicate a table. Looks better already that it has a place to sit. But I also need a shadow to anchor my piece of fruit. Shadows are great. They tend to anchor objects visually, and they're really important in paintings. You can have a lot of fun with shadows. You can put a lot of little different colors in. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a shadow. And always working on my lights and darks. I'm going to cool off the shadow because shadows are cool. Shade is cool. So I'm going to make a blue-gray. Now I'm going to start putting in lights and darks, and that's what really makes a painting pop. You're going to hear me say over and over again in these lessons, light against dark, dark against light. And also, you'll hear me say often, is that painting is just a bunch of corrections, and you keep on correcting until you get it acceptable to yourself. So I'm just going to put in my darks against my lights, and since the sun is hitting the orange on the side where I'll put the darks in, and on the other side I'll tend to put light against dark, dark against light, and it'll make that painting pop. I'm just being real careful here, but I can always correct it if I get things wrong. So let me go ahead and put in my lights and darks. And you can already see that it's starting to take on depth and dimension just by using lights and darks. I'm putting little highlights on the fruit as I go. Just working around lights and darks, darks and lights. Now the table is going to catch quite a bit of light because it's a flat surface, and if there's light from overhead, tables tend to catch a lot of light. So it's going to be pretty light. Work on my shadow a little more. More darks and lights. It is taking shape. It's amazing how something that is just two-dimensional can look three-dimensional. And I like to scatter color around just to coordinate the painting. So I'm just going to start sprinkling some different colors around on my painting. Always working on darks and lights. I'm just clarifying some of the highlights now that I've got some more darks in. They'll pop more now that there's some darks there. I'll blend this. Now that orange, that little shape where it almost has a cap that some oranges do, vertical lines catch less light than flat lines or rounded lines. And so I'm putting some highlights on the rounded lines a little bit more, in that vertical line, or I don't know if it's really vertical, on the cap is going to get some darker colors, and that will give that orange a little more shape. So now I'll just sprinkle a little bit of oranges and different colors around just to make the painting a little bit more coordinated and interesting. We want interesting paintings, not boring paintings. And those are those highlights and the lowlights. Just sprinkling color throughout. Color breathes life into paintings. So now I'm just putting my very last finishing touches, clarifying some of the lights and darks. Now when you have an area where it's midtones against midtones, you kind of lose some of the line. So I'm going to use a little trick. I'm putting some yellow, even though light probably wouldn't be hitting there, and a little bit of red. Your eye is going to mentally mix that into an orange, but it makes a little bit different value so it doesn't melt into the background. We're almost done here. So I want to say thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next lesson. Now you do have some homework, and that's painting 3 pieces of fruit, and I really want you to pay attention to where the light hits and the shadow falls.